Ready to go now? Grassroots, we good? Not quite ready. We still have to do our calisthenics, but we're okay. It's Tuesday, February 5th, continuation of our work session. This morning we were up taking a tour of Lupine Drive area in Mountain Valley. Now we're back. And up next is staff and community presentations. This is the county manager and county attorney performance appraisal process with Phyllis.
Hi there, Phyllis Mattice, Assistant County Manager, and with me,
Melissa Knight, Deputy Director of Human Resources.
So in the past, the process for evaluating the county manager and county attorney has used an outside service through Employers Council, a nonprofit in Denver, to do a Multirater feedback form. Last year, the county started using a program called TrackStar, and we used it for all our employees. And it also includes a Multirater option to it. So we thought we would introduce to the board this option for evaluating county manager and county attorney, which makes it really a more sustainable model. It's within house. We have all the services that would be managed through HR, with myself still leading some of the process. Melissa's done a mock for you, so we'll kind of work through it. In your packet was the list of questions that we had provided to the staff of each John Peacock and John Ely, as well as managers and directors. And then what is contained in TrackStar, to give you a little bit of background about what the differences are. Both Johns, John Peacock and John Ely, have used this service, this software, for evaluating their employees. So they're familiar with it and know the component factors and are supportive of making a change. It's just an easier system for us because it's in-house. So with that, do you have any questions about the differences between the two before I move on? I tried to give you a lot of information in the packet, so we can just kind of go to the demos.
Only that, just quickly, the thing that I was trying to determine is, which is simpler, what's the simpler, more elegant thing? And I think you've already answered that, but
yeah, using our current system would be simpler for us. More sustainable too. Typically, I have assisted in taking all of your feedback and turning it into a narrative form. This would actually allow all the commissioners to input your own information, so someone like me wouldn't have to capture it. We'd still have to go through and figure out what you'd want the final document. So I gave you an outline of what the process might look like in the packet, with actual dates, looking at what's available on the calendar for the future. So we would still do some of that process, but I think it would be a little more streamlined by using the automated system that we have. So I'll let Melissa kind of walk you through how the system works. It does require a login, but it's really pretty simple.
So like Phyllis said, we've been on this. This is our second round in TrackStar. So all the employees across the organization use it, so everyone is familiar with it if we were to go out to employees using TrackStar. And essentially, the system can go in-house to employees and also externally into the community if you wanted any feedback from anybody out in the community. The system really just sends an email saying that the Board of County Commissioners is requesting your feedback for John Ely or John Peacock for the 2018 performance year. They click on a link and then it takes them right into the system to basically rate the two different Johns. So this would be the view from like Phyllis's standpoint or one of your standpoints as the manager over John Ely or John Peacock. And you could go right into the system. And we could build this out how you would like. So currently, the employees across the organization are weighted on the organizational values, which live in our strategic plan. There are 10 competencies if you're at a manager level and you have people reporting up into you. And then we could build in general comments. And then I just built in some other areas down here around morale, communication, vision, and opportunity for change. But all of this down here could change, and we could customize it, whether you would like to use the questions that were used previously from Employers Council or cut those back, not use the values, we could kind of play with that. Then as you scroll down, all the definitions for each of the values and competencies are right under the value. And then as you click on the different ratings, there's a 5-point scale rating for each one of the values and competencies. The information will pop up to actually describe what does it mean to be effective in that particular area around stewardship. And then you could kind of toggle between, okay, well, that doesn't really sound like it. Highly effective is this. The nice thing about the system, too, is it saves automatically, so you don't have to worry about losing anything, which was a concern in the past with the previous ways we used to do it.
Is it editable?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Skewed to one part.
Yes.
Got it.
And then as you go down, you fill it in. You could add in comments, which is nice. And then this actually, so this is a mock employee that we created. So I went in and then Patty went in.
Not me, the other Patty.
Patty Torreblanca in the HR department, and went in and just did a little test. So then you could actually see through the Multirater feedback process what everybody else is saying as you send it out.
Now, you've labeled those comments from anonymous. Now, is that the name of the commenter that you entered, or is it actually, you have a choice of toggling between anonymous and identifiable feedback?
Yes, you could do both anonymous or identifiable
So it's a choice
feedback.
you have there. Is that the actual choice, or is that just what you named the commenter?
I just made this one,
Okay.
this particular one anonymous, but
Got it.
it would say Jane Doe, Jack.
So you're anonymous. Aha.
Yes, I'm anonymous number one. Yes.
Could someone put their department as their name so that we would know that they work in a certain department and their comments might be important if they're working in a certain department and have a certain working relationship with the manager or the attorney?
Yes, so what we could do is we could actually build that in as a question, and we could say, which department are you in? And then it would do that. But then it would also, we could tie their name to it too, in terms of if you wanted to know which exact person said that. That makes sense.
I think just
Just-
knowing the department
Yeah.
would be important. I don't know if we need to know the name of the person. I think anonymity at some point
It's up to
is,
them.
yeah. It's
And
up
that's
to
how
them.
we had done it in the past. It was always anonymous, as far as,
Unless they want it.
yeah.
But I think that's a really good point, Steve. I think knowing that which department makes a difference when you're weighing how often do they interact directly with this person or not.
And so there can be 2 Multirater forms that are out there. And one of my thoughts is that the 5 of you could do a Multirater form and put your comments in. It might be after we get the one back from the staff, which is what we've done in the past. We shared the one that came from whoever we're surveying and getting that. And then the board can provide their comments and just put them in here, which would give us an easy way to capture it and an easy way to create a written document for the John and John, which just seems really odd to say. I'm sorry, just saying John and John. Okay?
So okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and then as you scroll down, essentially, this particular one is set up as we are, so it comes out to be strong performance. So it does weigh out depending on how the different multi-raters rate them. It takes that average and then assigns a score to the employee.
And I included those 5 overall scores in your packet. The strong performer. Okay, I don't remember them.
Oh, leading, strong, solid, building, and not meeting performance standards. So it's based on a 5-point rating scale.
Is there a bonus tied to the outcome of that?
So John and John receive the same that all employees do. So this year, their base rate would be increased by 3% because that's being provided to all employees. And then there is a bonus that's applied to the 3 levels of strong, solid, strong, and leading. Leading has a 3%, strong has a 2%, and solid has a 1%,
That's in addition to the overall 3%.
in addition to the overall 3%.
But for us, we have a little more flexibility in terms of how we determine that bonus because we only have 2 employees, right? So we're not as regulated, I don't think, as the organization.
I think we've stuck by it. In the past, we used to have a 1 to 7% where you had the ability to, you weren't dictated by having an average or anything. You were able to give everyone 7%. With this system, I'll go back to, if you wanted to do something different, I'd actually go to John and see what's in the documents that we have for the policy. They'd be okay with understanding that. But everyone in the organization who has an acceptable performance, middle,
But that's a good question. If we wanted
Is
to do
up.
something above and beyond, we would just have to find out how we could do that.
right. And you have done some other things, like provided additional training opportunities, and some of those that
Right.
those were totally within your purview.
Yeah.
That's been done before, and absolutely, you're correct on that one.
Could you scroll back down? Just I want to look at your headings, your categories again, just as we're quickly go through that.
In terms of organizational values.
Just looking at the competencies, just looking at how they're labeled.
Oh,
Got it. Okay.
yep. And then at the bottom, you'll see the overall scores, and it comes out anonymous reviewer, what everyone has scored. Then it averages the multi-rater score. And then in this test scenario, I've put myself in as the manager, so you could see that I've started scoring, and they're at strong right now. And then it averages everything out.
One of the challenges in the past is when we have, let's say, the different department heads or key people that would do evaluation on either John or John, is if you had a department, you may only have 1 or 2 people responding, so it really kind of skews it. So I don't know, does this do anything different that doesn't?
This system being used for getting feedback would only be feedback for your purposes. It wouldn't be the actual score. It'd be your scores that are the score for the individuals. This would just be feedback. And you're right, it's always been skewed depending on what the relationship is with the department. But this would be just used for feedback. It wouldn't be used for a final score. You would have them there as kind of a gauge or a snapshot, but not for, you can do whatever you want on your
Okay.
scoring. It wouldn't impact what your scores are.
Okay.
Kelly?
Would they conduct a self-assessment, and would that happen prior to our assessment?
Totally up to you. Yes, we did that in the last one we did with the Multirater for Mountain States, and we asked them both to score themselves. The group getting feedback, managers, directors wouldn't see that. That would only be for you all to see.
It was very interesting last time, and I think worth the effort for them to do that.
And that's what this meeting's about, is kind of to figure out what's the process that you want. So you kind of have this menu, and you can pick and choose what you want to do.
Steve?
I'm looking at the goals part of the assessment. If we chose to add the goals component, would we put each of their last year's goals? And then that's what we would actually be rating?
Right. That's where we put those goals that we did from last year. And in the past, the goals would go in here, and then I'd also provide you with the evaluation that you all completed for John and John last year. So as you get ready to complete, you'd have that as part of your information as background material so that you can do your feedback.
I had a couple things that I don't know how far we are into this, how much more you have. I was just thinking that the thing that would make me most comfortable is understanding where we all, how our perceptions fit in the, establishing a baseline for the various ways you rate. And you touched on it briefly, but I'm wondering if there's at the beginning a paragraph or something where we could kind of sync us all up in. If you go and look at one of your rating scales from not satisfying to exceptional, whatever it is. I guess it's intuitive, but it would be nice to to look at that and then understand, so we can establish a baseline, so we all know. If I'm feeling nastier one day and I decide to, that nobody's doing a good job, is it going to be easy enough to find, to reset, to re-skew it? Does that make sense? So that we're all talking about the same thing. What exceptional or okay for Patty may be different than my judgment of that. And I'm just wondering, is there a way to quantify it, or describe it, define it at the very beginning, so that we're all on the same page? So when I say, yeah, I thought they were whatever the sub-exceptional thing is, in sub-exceptional, you'll know what I'm talking about.
I think we've had those conversations in the past as we've gone through the individual pieces of performance. It can either be you put what your opinions are, that they can always be changed, so you can go back. So then when we have a joint meeting with you in exec and have that conversation, and Patty says, no, they're really exceptional because of this, and you go, oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah, boom, we change it. So that's really the feedback, and that's always been the conversation we've had. So I'm just trying to get a little different box around this so that it's a little more.
Right.
I
So
like your
we're agreeing on
simpler.
we're just agreeing on the definitions.
Right.
I had
And
one
the
more thing,
ratings.
but the only other thing I was going to say, if we could get the tenses right and all the description, the categories, if it's adaptable or next to productivity, it'd be adaptability. Just wondering, the correct tenses and all that way it all just somehow. I'm not even anal retentive. But I noticed it. And
Yeah,
Kelly
so
is.
these are, TrackStar has about 100 competencies built into their library. So we have used their,
Got to choose theirs. Oh,
yep, well, we could make up our own, which is how the values got into here, but that's where the competencies are. And if I may just go back and address your first question.
Yeah.
So for example, if you look here at adaptable, this is the definition that comes from TrackStar, so adapts to change and considers new approaches. And then as you click here on effective, the definition pops up. So what does it really mean to be effective in terms of adaptable? Then if that doesn't really sound like it may fit, it actually changes when you go to the right or left of where that middle ground is. So that may help a little bit in terms of really lining up your perception of the particular employee with what the competency
right.
is.
We'll all have the same definition. That's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kelly?
So just from a procedural question, will we, the five of us, then be agreeing on what that score is, or will each of us individually decide, effective through exceptional, et cetera, and then you weight them or average them, or?
I would say yes, you input them separately, but then we come together to meet and then come up with a single rating for the person at that time. So if you looked at it and everyone has exceptional for adaptive, well, then that's one down and we call it good.
Sure.
If we go to the next one and there's 5 different ratings, then there's a conversation of why did everyone rate it differently? What should they be?
Okay, thank you.
So at the end, there will be one rating for
Consensus on
each,
one.
which is essentially how we've done it in the past. Kelly, you haven't sat through that yet. Is the conversation goes, on the specific projects that they've both been through or challenges, going through them, where they succeeded, where were they still being challenged, things that are just not solvable. Maybe something that just impacts
Okay, great.
world peace. We're not going to get to, but
Yeah.
we can try.
Hunger, though.
I'll go for that.
I have a question as far as timing. Are you going to go through that, or? Mm-hmm. Okay, then I'll jump in.
Okay. If we can go through what you think of the form, if this is acceptable, you could say, I don't really like this and I want to go back to what we used before. That's okay.
This is very user-friendly compared to what we've done before. I like the definitions, like, is someone effective or are they highly effective? I don't know, but then when you read the definitions, that right away you probably will go one way or the other by having the definitions of what is highly effective mean in this one. So I think that would help me for filling it out personally.
Great. I like the form too. I like this.
I think it's worth a try. Let's see how we do with it.
I think it's great. I think the question for us is, in the past, we've done a 360 review, and do we want to continue to do that? And we didn't, and we sort of selected, it wasn't just the entire organization that did the 360. You can sort of remind us who did that.
You did one last year. You didn't do the one the year before. I think that was an off cycle as we were changing the evaluation cycles to January. We did directors for both John Ely and for John Peacock. For John Peacock, they're mostly people that reported to him. For John Ely, the directors are people that deal with him on legal issues. And we did the department staff, so anyone that was in their department, so the attorneys was all the attorney staff was asked. And all of the admin staff were asked for John Peacock as a separate group. We did not ask managers for John Ely, but John Peacock wanted to do the management level, so that's managers, fleet manager, telecommunications manager, those staff that work underneath directors. So that's who we had done. And yes, George, the choice is: do you want that feedback this year or not? Do you want to try it on your own, or do you want to try with a lot of people giving you feedback?
Did we not include key managers of departments that work a lot with, just like ComDev, works a lot with the attorney's office? Didn't we get comments from?
I don't know if we can do whatever we want.
I thought we did.
Yeah, I don't know that we definitely did Cindy as director.
Yeah, oh,
So directors, yeah. So
Okay, just wanna make
Cindy,
sure.
You'd have Gary at Open Space, and
okay.
Right. We just we wouldn't have had, I don't know, Brian
Ellen,
Paul or
yeah.
Ellen, or
Okay, or
Ellen or Suzanne.
Okay.
Okay, moving along, we're about halfway through the presentation, I assume. That's where we are on time, so, great.
Okay.
Well, what the question is, do we want to do a 360 or
I
not?
thought we already, sorry.
I don't know. Do you see any heads nod? I didn't hear
You
any.
missed that part.
I didn't hear any heads nodding.
No, I think we should continue to do that. I think that was really valuable information.
Yeah, I also think in particular for John Peacock, because he does have direct interaction with all levels of staff, particularly through manager chats and things like that, that it might be valuable to extend that for his review at least.
Yeah, and in John Ely's office, you never know. I mean, when he kind of does the same, just not on a consistent basis. It's kind of here or there as departments need that kind of legal advice on something that you would never even think of. So we need to, yeah, I think it's important.
So
I will say, having used this system for a couple of years now, since you guys introduced it, from a staff perspective, it is very easy for people to access it and provide comments. So from the
So if I get totally confused, I can call you?
sure.
Okay.
From the view of being requested for input, it's not a heavy lift to say, oh gosh, I don't have time to, really put effort towards this, even if it's important. It's pretty straightforward and easy to do.
Great.
Great.
So timing-wise, when I hear self-evaluations being requested of John and John, and then the Multirater going out, and my proposed time frame was February 11th, so beginning next week. That would be sent. So we've done the E team, the A team, and each department staff. The AIM team is kind of the management level that we did not send, though, to John last year. So would you want that level? I mean, there may be a lot of people that say, I don't have any feedback, or we just don't ask them.
Give me some names. You guys keep coming up with new names for these teams every year.
That's
and
the
I'm so-
manager level. So it would be,
Would be Suzanne Wolf.
Suzanne, Brian
Yeah,
Paul.
I don't think we need it for John Ely.
I wouldn't mind hearing it. But what does it do to the workload? What does it do to the complexity of is it
So it's-
complicated, or is it just plug right into the system and
How many
it's
people
data
is
that we
that?
can gather?
It's about 25 people.
So then that's 25 people, we would be sorting through their input?
Their input would be clustered. We'd ask them we'd ask them demographics and can sort that.
I would say, why not?
I don't think it's necessary.
think
Two
it's
no's and
necessary.
a why not?
I mean, you could say, why not? Why not just have everybody in the organization do it? I mean, at some point, I think we want to get some good information from those key people, because we're just sort of trying to get the big picture. and
I think for Peacock, because he deals with them.
Right.
But John Ely doesn't necessarily deal with them.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, so we'll do it
For
with one and not the other.
For
Okay.
Peacock, yes.
And if we find that,
I've got two no's and a why not, but we arrived at a yes, and I haven't heard from these two.
Well, I would be definitely yes, and I think doing the same system that is being used for the rest of the county employees makes it simpler. Everybody, they understand it, they use that. And it's just a matter of, we're the ones who would be new to it, using that system, so
But we're
just a
talk-
one-year transition.
yeah, we're talking about, do you want John Peacock and John Ely to both have the AIM team, or just John Peacock to have the AIM team?
Well,
Those
I
are the
think,
managers.
If we did this first year, have it the same for both. Maybe the lower level managers don't fill it out because they don't know, or they just haven't had that much interaction. And then in future years, if it's like the AIM team is not participating in it, then we could say, well, let's drop them out.
yeah, I would not go there. I mean, even in the past years, when we've extended it, a lot of times we've had no responses because people will say, I've not had any interaction, or I can't answer this question because of whatever. So for me, I think we just want to keep people that really interact and will be able to provide us with some useful information. I'm not going to lose sleep over it either way, but
Right, it'll sort itself out.
But staff
just-
might lose sleep over.
Yeah, we don't want to take up too much of people's time if it's not necessary. Kelly?
So would it,
Oh,
you're
sorry.
suggesting then it would just be would it be the E team?
For John Ely, it would be the E-team, which is the directors and his department staff. And for John Peacock, it would be the directors, the AIM team, which is the management staff, the level below directors, and his department staff.
So Peacock would get the full 9 yards, and Ely would get the people who just deal
A
directly
little
with him.
bit fewer because there are fewer people who
Deal
have
directly with
interactions
him.
with him. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. I am curious because I know there is a function in this system where, I could submit a comment about Melissa if I wanted to that her supervisor would see. And I've received those from staff of like, oh, your staff was super helpful on this one topic. And, that staff person never knew that came and it was unprompted, not part of an evaluation. So I don't know if that already exists as an option for anyone who may or may not have feedback about John or John to do that anyway.
We can. We have not yet. I think going through and using the system first, and then maybe in the next year.
Yeah, and we don't need to
Open that up.
introduce that now. I just wasn't sure because I know it exists already for staff. I'm not sure if they were grouped in with that. So we don't need to introduce that
So
right
that's
now.
an
but
option.
Thanks for the
But
clarifying.
For
thanks
next
for
year.
bringing it up.
Yeah.
It's nice to know what it's capable of.
Yes. I do think people will self-select. People who have things to say will make sure they're heard, and people who don't, will just opt out anyway. So I'm fine with
Okay.
the consent
Is
of
that
this
clear
direction
enough?
from the board, I think.
And so also on the 11th, we'll send the multi-rater to the 5 of you. So you get to play with it and see, you can go back in, it doesn't close, right? They can go back in, make your changes, go in one night and go put whatever you think in, and the next morning go, I think I want to change some, and you can. And then we would come back in exec on for the 12th, I'd give you the packet of your past evaluations with John, so you'd have the goals. The goals will be in the multi-rater for the board. I don't think we've put the goals in the multi-raters for the staff.
We haven't.
So I'm not going to include that for there. They'll only get the competencies and the values.
That's part of the personnel privacy part.
So we do not, but
sounds
you will see the goals in the ones that you rate. Then I get to come back on March 26th in exec with Melissa, because she'll know how to make it work. And we would bring you the results of the multi-rater, the results of your multi-rater, have the conversation, so you get to discuss their performance. I would come back with the draft, so once we have that feedback, we finalize the ratings, what you want to include in the comment section. So the comment section is really the snapshot of the narrative that we've done in the past, only by categories. And that's
Right.
kind of how it was put together in the past anyway. It was by those categories. And then it goes way out till March 12th as far as your time, and I've got these on future agendas. So you'd have time to meet with John and John one-on-one or 5-on-1 for you to be able to discuss their performance and what's coming up in the next year.
Patty?
Okay, I'm out of town from the 21st till the 14th.
February 21st to March 14th.
So I can do this. This will be my 16th time doing these evaluations. I do want to participate. So if I can have, since I can do it online with you guys, I can then, you can send me the because I'll be in the country, so I can have my iPad with me. So I can do my own evaluation and submit comments. Is that okay with the board that I do that? Want to make sure. And then I've always been, well, after Dorothea left, I was the one that did the wordsmithing, but Greg's got a good knack for that too, of the final presentation to both Johns. But if I can just have an opportunity to review it.
And do you want to delay this? So they'll
No, I don't want to delay it. I want to
Okay.
move it forward. I think if I have the opportunity to give input prior to the 12th, which I will, I'll be out of the country on the 12th, then I can participate. I've talked to John Peacock about participating in other matters that might come forward, how I can maybe submit comments for Greg to read or whatever. But this is really critical, I think, for me to be involved in, and I'm not going to pass up the opportunity to be where I'm going and to be part of this.
Okay.
It's my job.
Okay.
I would just maybe suggest, since you have the comment field, you can be very specific as to why you're
Yeah.
choosing one of the 5 metrics.
So I can
we
put my
understand that.
words in there because I won't be able to put my words in here. Perfect.
Great.
Well, putting your words in there's a chance those words are just going to roll into the final document too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see all the comments from you being in there. Same as when I collected your comments last time and put them into paragraphs. Now they're just going to be clustered under competencies or values.
Yeah, and I can also put my right comments on the previous evaluations for the goals. I can do that and then just flip those documents back to you so you can combine that. Perfect. Thank
So
you.
this year I just have a partner with me in the process, which is Melissa.
Great. Excellent.
Great for me.
Yeah, great. And we've streamlined it. It seems that should be easier. Okay, that's great. Schedule
my
looks
travel
good.
packet.
Schedule seems
That
fine.
works. I mean, now we have a plan for when Patty's out for that.
Yeah, I don't want to delay it.
piece.
I think we can move it forward and I can still participate as long as it's okay with the board.
Fine. Just don't miss any deadlines.
I won't.
Okay.
I'll have plenty of time.
And it's super compatible on the iPad too, so it works
Perfect.
really nicely.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay.
What else you got? That it?
That is actually it. We're a little
Okay.
quicker than I thought.
Excellent. If anybody
Perfect.
gets an invitation from John or John to dine out in the next month, just make sure we're all invited.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Okay, here we go. We're a little ahead of time, but future agendas review coming up, and that would probably, is Phyllis going to be here with us?
Yeah. Changing hats.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Melissa. Oh, and that computer went down, so we'll bring it back up. First, what I'll do is pass a retreat agenda. This is a draft from John
The
Peacock.
mystery guest.
Yeah.
But I know he's been working with them on what that outline is there.
Oh, it's a gentleman?
I just don't know that.
Can you do a quick Google for you, Patty?
You gonna Google it?
Yeah. A leader in facilitation and strategic planning. She got her start more than 26 years ago and focuses on breakthrough solutions for, let's see, real-world solutions.
Where is she from?
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome. Let's see. Well, she is from Colorado.
Well, we can go
Sear
online,
resident.
Kelly.
Yeah.
It's as easy as you.
Yeah, okay.
26
Don't
years of
test me on that one.
strategic planning, facilitation experience.
We're going to assume 10.
So we wanted to just get that agenda out to you, so you have an idea of what we're heading for. The other future agenda item I have, actually I have two. Next week, some options on site planning for the Phillips Mobile Home Park are coming to you. I wanted to let you know that our consultant firm, DHM, along with Bob Schultz Consulting, are gonna be meeting with the residents there prior to the meeting, because we understand a lot of them are working and wouldn't be able to come to the meeting. So after the packet has been published, the consultant's gonna go and meet with the residents so they know what the packet is and how to look at the packet.
That was one of my questions. We will let the public know, though, that there will, the residents, that there will be meeting if any of them do want to attend. I
Absolutely.
want to make sure that they
Yes.
know. Okay.
And
It's up to
Bob
them.
is also letting them know that they're going to review what's being provided in the packet and if they have questions of him beforehand. So we wanted to be totally transparent and allow them some time. Now, they can come to the meeting too, or they can watch the meeting, but that way the consultant is having, he's built a relationship with those folks there and wanted to be able to speak with them personally. So
And the
just let you know that's happening.
That's the date is on that one.
It's the next meeting on is it the 12th?
The
Yeah,
12th is
February
our-
12th.
February 12th,
So
got it.
starting on the weekend prior, so after the packet's been published on Friday. So he's gonna be meeting with them
That's this
Saturday.
weekend.
And he has some residents who are hosting meetings in their homes, and he's gonna use the Woody Creek Tavern for one of them in case, just to offer different times for them to be able to meet. So that was we really appreciate, they've been a great partner, those consultants. The other one I have is the ASE Airport Board Visioning Kickoff is February 21st at the Meadows. And that's 4 to 7.
Is it at Dorhosier?
I'm gonna guess it is. They didn't put that in here.
7 PM,
4 to 7.
4 to 7 p.m.
4 to 7.
And
on the 21st.
is that the one that John wanted board members there? I mean, we're kind of staying out of the other working
I'm under the
group.
impression that we're there. Every time they bring it up, they're mentioning it to me, don't forget. So I think
Just want to
we're
make
there.
sure we're clear, because we kind of were stepping back on any of the other working group meetings, and
Right, but I don't think they're going to be actually doing any work.
this is a good one
It's
for-
just sort of an overview, organizational.
and what day was that?
meeting.
21st.
The 21st, so that's Wednesday. Wednesday? No.
It's a Thursday. I will be in the air,
Be in the air.
thinking of you all.
Well, on that date, February 21st is also, Clear is doing the Energy Roundtable, the Renewable Energy Roundtable with NREL, National Regulator.
Renewable energy.
Renewable
Energy
energy
Renewable
lab.
Energy, thank you, is coming up. It's going to be a fairly big deal for helping chart the course of our renewable energy future in the Valley, Tri-County area, and that's the 21st and 22nd. And I know at least 2 of us are planning to attend that in the daytime, and then I'll plan certainly on getting back up here in time for, my guess is probably 3 of us will be going to that, and I think Charlotte
No,
will
I'm
know
not going.
most it. Sorry?
I'm not going.
George is not there, okay.
The 3 of us, have-
Possibly the 3 of us.
we
will
should
be there.
notice that.
That
because
has
the
to be
3 of
noticed.
us would like to go.
Yep.
I told Charlotte, I think she
So
knows that.
that's at the Glenwood Recreation Center on the 21st, it's from 8 to 5.
But you'll have to leave early to get back up here if
What's
you
it,
want to.
Glenwood?
The Glenwood Recreation Center, yeah. So if you had to leave early, you obviously would have
Have to leave at 2:30 or 3, right?
yeah.
But if you guys all wanted to be up
Is
here.
it the next morning also? I can't remember.
It's 2 days, yeah, day and a half.
But that's
yeah,
a
so
lot of time sitting there.
just so that's on the
Okay.
radar.
So 3 board are attending the renewable energy program
It's
on the
with
2
Clear.
days
21st and then half of the 22nd, yep.
and 22nd. Okay. Okay. That's all I have in future agendas.
Okay, that's it for future agendas. We have something else, Patty?
Yeah, since I will not be here on the 26th when we do our board membership reports, since we tried to do it in January, but we hadn't had any meetings, well, now that we've had meetings, I will submit something in writing to John Peacock, just little blurbs of what happened at Northwest Cog and workforce, and Economic Development District in Accra.
Great.
So he'll have a little something
We'll
to
have
read at the
something
meeting.
written down. Perfect, thank you.
And the other thing is on the, when we do the courthouse, they're not, it's on the 26th of February. I'll also submit, because I was really concerned that space for the public defender's office was not provided for in the courthouse. And I don't know how that got forgotten, so I want to make sure that they've included space for the public defenders do an amazing job for this community and for the people, and we need to make sure they have designated space in that new courthouse renovation. So hopefully somebody will keep an eye out for that if it's been included or not.
Great.
I'll try and talk with Jody before I leave town. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. George?
February 27th, we've got a land use regarding Windstar. I'd like to have open space staff be there, and also perhaps have open space and trails board take a look at that prior and perhaps come to us with a recommendation.
Good suggestion, thank you.
And I know open space is meeting this Thursday. I wonder whether they could just sort of plant the idea so they'd have time to come
Think
back.
about it.
Okay.
Good point, George.
All right, anything else on future agendas? Anybody want to add anything else? Let's move on to open discussion then.
All right, letters.
We've got letters. Kara and Alex on deck. Our letter writing department has been very productive.
Which one are we starting with?
Carrie can choose that.
Hello, Kara Silbernagle with the manager's office.
And Alex Sanchez with the manager's office.
I'm gonna let Alex start us off with the federal shutdown letter. This is kind of circling back. We were about ready to send off the other letter when it reopened. So based on the 3-week kind of timetable that it sounds like Congress was dealing with, we kind of redirected the statement in the letter, and so just wanted to be able to have a discussion with you guys on that.
Yeah, so at the board's request, we drafted a letter regarding the shutdown. The government did reopen again, but only on a 3-week basis. So we wanted to voice the concerns and the impacts that Pitkin County felt during the shutdown, while also advocating against the use of the shutdown as a tactic in the future. We have it addressed to Senator Gardner, Senator Bennett, and Representative Tipton's office. And are there any comments regarding the letter?
No, I'm
Go ahead.
glad you put in something, because I was going to see about the resolution that we passed. I want them to know that we were working on that effort. NACO, the NACO media, newspaper, whatever they call it, did point out what other jurisdictions are doing across the country, and we didn't get in there, and we did such a great job with that. So, are you stealing letters from me? So I appreciate it. This is really good, and I think we definitely need to send it on. I need to see this, and the fact is how many days till the 15th?
The 15th is when.
It's like next week.
Yeah.
10 days from now, right.
Are they moving along anywhere in Washington? I haven't really heard much.
I don't know.
Okay.
And we did hear from our counterparts that some of the planning offices and some of the federal agencies are already 10% behind just from those 35 days. So that's the impact
Catch
that
up.
we're going to feel for a while.
Yeah, and we don't need to have it continued. Okay, I think it's a great letter.
I'd like to ask the board if you know, given the news lately that some of the government agencies did not shut down during the shutdown and continued, let's say the gas and oil leasing agencies, while they shut down all the other aspects of lands management. I'm wondering if we have a comment on that, because it does seem it seems like a real manipulation of even the shutdown process to me, and it wouldn't bother me to comment on that. Any comments from you all?
That's fine. I mean, it's interesting because Trump's whole premise was the need to address border security, and what he did was he shut down the main agencies that protect our borders and our security, from the TSA to the Coast Guard. And so, there's no rhyme or reason why if the government's so concerned about our security, why would they first shut down our key agencies that are responsible for our security?
So that seems like maybe it's a bit capricious in a way, and it doesn't bother me to say that in this letter.
It's kind of like selective enforcement. So if we wanted to add something on that vein, I don't have a problem with that, another little quick paragraph in there.
Capricious selective enforcement.
Got those words, Alex?
Yeah.
Carefully
Steve,
worded.
Kelly,
I would agree with adding those 2 points to the letter. And the points that are in here, the impacts on
It's
the
well written.
employees living and working in Picken County you're really spot on that.
yeah, nicely done.
I also think as a community who lived through an emergency, to threaten a national emergency when,
Yeah.
emergencies are imminent. And so making a decision about something that's an emergency or not an emergency is, again, another capricious
plan the
tactic.
emergency.
Right. Could you help me understand a little bit some of the detail around Aspen's Kiko's negative effects as they've
Yeah.
discussed with you?
During the shutdown, and this was in the newspaper, they were currently going through process to expand a chairlift and also some other operations on federal land. And being that the Forest Service was shut down, they weren't able to continue with those. Kind of similarly to how it mentions basalt, planning process around mitigating some of the fire impacts. That was also hindered because the Forest Service was not operating.
I've also heard about delays with regards to special recreation review on the Crown. I don't know if that's helpful to look into a little further.
Question I have,
Yeah, go
there's more. I see it's signed by 3 counties.
No, I think you're looking at a different letter.
Oh, sorry, did I have the wrong one up in front of me?
It's the one that's on Picken
On
County
letterhead.
letterhead.
God, okay, thank you, all right.
I know, there's a lot of letters floating around.
Okay, so we're good.
In the letter to Senator Bennett, Russell Senate Office Building has 2 L's and one L is one. Senator Bennett does have 1 T, so that's probably led to spelling Russell with 1 L.
Oh, you caught that? Okay,
Yeah.
you're good with that, all right.
It's right on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, which one's next? Where are we going next?
Let's go to the next one, the one not on letterhead. I believe you guys discussed this, just wanted to do a quick check-in. This is in relation to the Thompson Divide and the Core Act that Senator Bennett and the other senator's name is escaping me right now.
Joe Neguse,
Joe Neguse. Congressman Neguse introduced. We did hear, this is from Trout Unlimited in support of it. Trout Unlimited basically took the board statement, I guess, from the letter from 2015 that was to the BLM, and basically kind of revised this letter. And so we have heard that Commissioner Martin from Garfield County has agreed to sign on, and Gunnison County, and so he believed he was going to get a signature from both counties today. So just wanted to have a check-in that you guys are good with signing in on this letter.
Yes.
And then we'll send that, and then he'll send that on to all of their outlets through
great.
Trout Unlimited.
It's really great to have Garfield and Gunnison County joining us.
Absolutely,
Garfield does.
yeah. The next one is the Shear Task Force. This was brought to your guys' attention from Alan Harvey about potentially us writing our own letter. I think what we've heard back, and some of you heard directly from Western leaders, is that for whatever reason they are really looking for a massive sign-on letter, and so proposing that we just sign on to this letter rather than writing our own.
Right, and I had calls from Alan, of course, but then also representatives from Western Leaders Network as well, underscoring the importance of just signing one joint letter. We can always submit our own and our own names as we wish, but they'd really requested that, so I'd be in favor of that if I could jump in. I think George said he would. Oh, this is the,
Yeah.
so we're good.
A lot of times the Western Leaders Network will have individual commissioners all sign, so there will be a long list of names. And I think it might be more effective to have just the Board of County Commissioners having all of us endorsing it.
Okay. It is like a Google Sheet sign-on letter, so maybe after the meeting, Greg, or something, we can connect and have it be the Pitkin County Board of Commissioners.
Great. Certainly.
Okay.
During our next break.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
Okay.
Got that one done.
This one is a little long, and I'm sorry I didn't get it to you guys sooner. It's more of a discussion point today. So this comes from, we're members of Colorado Communications Utility Alliance, CCUA, and they've been doing a lot of groundwork on what's happening at the FCC between cable franchising and small cell and local control that's coming down. And so this is a draft letter that their attorney, Ken Fellman, had drafted of municipalities to potentially send to the delegation. There's definitely some changes we could make in it, but wanted to bring it to your guys' attention about potentially submitting a letter. A little bit more background, I guess, is basically the FCC has initiated rulemaking on basically the ability of local control over siting of 5G towers. Pretty limiting it. That's also why you saw City of Aspen came out with land use changes and amendments to address that. You really can't say no. All you can have is really design standards to kind of specify, but local governments do not have the ability to say no. And so this is addressing, there's a couple different lawsuits going out against that legislation, and so that's kind of House Bill 530 is to address some of those issues that within the FCC rulemaking. And then the other bigger one, I think they're both important, but the other one is also the FCC potentially taking away franchising rights. As you know, we just signed our franchise agreement last year. It lasts 10 years. Maybe cable goes away. I don't know. I saw an article that said people will always have cable to watch the Super Bowl, so who knows? Either way,
once a year in January.
Either way, it provides a really important community benefit because that's where we get our funding for our PEG fees and CGTV and to be able to air our public meetings. So we can work on drafting something that is a little bit more tailored and maybe not so long-winded as this one, but wanted to get your guys' input on that.
This was talked about briefly at Northwest COG, because it's a regional, obviously, concern. Was there an issue in Denver where the towers were just popping up in everybody's front yard, backyard, side yard, everywhere randomly? People were like, how's this happening? And I think that's what really rose to some attention on the Front Range anyway. So, I think we definitely need to do it, and we need to pass it on to the City of Aspen too. And if we need to tweak it with some more personal touches, I don't have a problem doing that, just to make it our own.
Okay.
They won't come back to us and ask for a uniform letter. Will they?
No. I do not
I'm
believe
okay with it. I think it's good. I'm supportive.
I do have some questions about 5G technology
I'll try.
that are, to me, unanswered. I don't know the answers. One thing it would require, the towers would be very closely spaced along roads and blocks, like one every city block kind of a spacing.
Correct.
I therefore presume that they will use a huge amount of power to operate hundreds and hundreds more cell towers than we have now. And I'm just curious, what is the power demand from adding all these extra towers?
That's a
And
great
is it
question.
something that is even doable for a community?
That's a great question. We can definitely look into
And
it.
the other thing would be with autonomous cars coming online, and is 5G essential for autonomous cars to work, that you could plug in a destination, your car's driving itself? I don't know if it is or if it would enhance the autonomous car capabilities, but I think I'd like to know that answer. It might be essential to do 5G to really have a good autonomous car economy, because I think that's something that's coming.
I know what I've heard so far on the autonomous cars, that it's more important to get fiber in the road, in the roadways. And this goes to the 5G. We can't build out 5G until we have fiber in the roadways, which is why they're looking at fiber in I-70 and fiber up 82. You need fiber before you can get 5G. But as far as then after that of 5G, we can definitely look into it and see what people are hearing about that.
I wouldn't mind having a primer, maybe individually or at some point at a presentation just on what 5G implies, because I don't know all of what it means, how many towers we would expect to have in our town or in the county, and how they'd be powered. Great question, how they'd be connected. So maybe there's an opportunity there to get on a future agenda with a presentation on that,
Yeah, absolutely.
assuming you two or you.
No, I would love a primer as well. But I will say Paul Schultz, the IT director for City of Aspen, has really taken the lead on this. I know 5Gs are really coming into the cities first, and so I know Aspen has even started to get some inquiries about it, so it will branch out to the county, but he's really taken the lead and understands all the technology much more, so maybe we can get him to come in and give you guys a primer, and myself as well.
Excellent,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Okay.
Just in time for 10G to come forward.
Exactly. 6G will be up next. Okay, moving right along. Any questions? All right, off to the next event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we're a
And I
couple
think
minutes
do we
early.
have Gary Tannenbaum here?
I've got some open discussion.
Okay, George, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, two things. One is the Basalt Library Board changed their bylaws to reflect better the statute in terms of appointing board members. So in the past, two of us have gone down and done interviews with applicants from our seat, Pickens County, as well as Eagle County and Basalt. And we've had a commissioner from Eagle County and Pickens, and usually a town council person from Basalt, and we would interview all those different seats, and then we would make a decision and make the recommendations back to our boards. Well, the statute actually is a little bit different, and so the Basalt Library is going to follow the letter of the law. And so the statute says that the legislative body, which is us, would select two people to then make recommendations to the legislative body to appoint a board member to the library board. So what that means is that, similar to all of our other board applications and appointments, we'll be doing that here just for Pickens County. We won't be interviewing on Eagle County applicants nor Basalt. So we can appoint two people as we're sitting here to be the committee to make the recommendations to the board as a whole, but in reality, we're just going to be interviewing an applicant, whether it's someone who's reapplying or someone new, and making that appointment. And so Charlotte knows who's up for reappointment, and she'll follow our normal application forms. So that's just slight change.
So we don't have to appoint a group to tell us who to appoint after we've
We just do it
appointed?
right here at the table, yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
than-
So we'll see that coming up. The other thing is, and I mentioned this last week, special events permits. I mentioned the bike ride the Rockies, and now we all saw the letter. Greg, thanks for replying to the constituent who was concerned about the ski company's proposal for a big concert again at the end of the season at Buttermilk. I'm assuming that has to come through our process, and I think we need to have a discussion on all these applications that are coming on special events, and there's an assumption that these things are going to happen, and we know nothing about them.
I did talk to ComDev today about something else and brought up the Ride the Rockies, and it's coming over the pass and right through town and then up to Snowmass, and that they were going to be in contact with Snowmass to find out what their event permit process was and why we haven't seen it yet.
Right. Well, right now we're not going to issue a permit.
I know, we don't,
But anyway, to be fair to the special events people, they should know whether they have a permit or not, and if there's a route that needs to be changed or a concert that needs to have a time frame on it.
Yeah, I forgot about the Buttermilk one, and it has to come through a permitting process, just like X Games.
Yeah.
I think they're using the X Games infrastructure that's probably still gonna be on the mountain to hold that concert, so.
Right. Steve?
On the concerts at the X Games, it sounded to me like from the letter that the woman wrote from West Buttermilk that the sound, the decibel limits were being far exceeded from what they should have been, probably at the edge of the concert venue. And if it's shaking her house, hundreds of yards away, that's probably too many decibels. And I wonder what sort of
Well, I think that was the only complaint.
monitoring we have of the sound level.
I think that's the only complaint we received, so if her house was shaking, I'm sure there were a lot of others. And it's really hard to say what the decibels were, because she didn't call at the time, so nobody had a monitor or meter up there, so that's a tough one. So maybe we should find out if there were other complaints filed that night, because she was the only one that took the time to write a letter. And let's just find out if it was just her house, isolated, or if anybody else, because I usually get the calls, because everybody goes online and my name's first, and I didn't hear any negative, anything, any feedback from anybody. And I usually get the calls about parking at West Buttermilk. I didn't hear that this year, or trespassing issues at West Buttermilk. I didn't hear anything about that. So, Phyllis, maybe if we could follow up and see if we just didn't hear what the complaints were. They weren't loud enough.
If I could bring up the issue with the West Buttermilk gate closure, which isn't our purview, but I spoke to ski company and the managers for the homeowners association about closing the West Buttermilk gate, and I proposed to them that if perhaps we could just close that gate a little later, like at 6:30 instead of as early as they were. That would allow the after work ski commuter, hikers to get up and get their exercise after work, but close it down before the late night moonlight party crowd gets there. And that's going to go around. I think there may be a little bit more self-policing and community responsibility aspect among the skiers as well. And I'm going to pursue that with ski company. If any of you hear anything or anybody speaks to you about it, just know that we're working on it.
So Greg, I just want to clarify for the public too, because we've received letters from people saying, when did that road become private and how come it became private? That road has always been private. It's
Always.
a private driveway to private driveways. That gate has always been there, and it's been at the pleasure of the homeowners, or the grace that they've allowed the public to access. And it's my understanding it's because of what we're seeing in so many of our areas of abuse. Too many people, too much noise, too much littering, too much disrespect for the privacy of the people along that private driveway. So again, it's a tough one, but I think if something can be worked out so they can at least try something different to see how it works, I think it would be great. But again, I thank you, Greg, for your time, even though again, the BOCC has no authority over this, but that doesn't mean we can't try.
We can call meetings and see who shows up. Anything else?
I just want to circle back on whether we're sending someone to the NACO conference in the beginning of March. I don't think we tied that up, or if we need to ask staff to go or nobody to go.
I had thought about flying from California to Washington D.C. and back again, and it just doesn't seem feasible. Steve, I don't know if you wanted to go. It would only leave 3 members of the board here. It's the legislative, it's great to be on the Hill and get to meet people, but it's an expensive trip, and I think maybe we should just look at the NACO conference that comes up, I think, in June or July, and maybe looking at attending that.
Yeah, I have, in my mind, I haven't totally sorted it out yet, like thinking what level we should be participating in NACO.
At all.
Because Rachel was going a lot to
Well, she was on the Public Lands Board.
to the
so-
Weir things, and twice a year to the NACO things, and I think there is some value in participating, but to what extent we want to put resources towards that. I just have not been able to get a feel for that yet.
I might be interested in going to their conference, but I need to see what the agenda's gonna be, because a lot of times you go there, and if you're not involved with the committee, then you're just kinda hanging out, you know, so you have to keep going until you get on a committee like Rachel did. So I think maybe we just need to follow it and see, because I am interested in maybe participating, depending upon what their
And
conference
that
is.
was my thought too on the committees, because that's where the work is really done.
That's pretty much all they
And
do.
those committees do phone call meetings and whatnot. They're
Yeah.
not just meeting a couple times a year. So it's a commitment to decide what committee to participate on and to really put the effort into it.
So does that mean then we won't be sending anybody for the March legislative meeting? And-
Yeah, I would not send staff, and so if there's not a commissioner interested, and again, as we know, Rachel was a traveling fool, to say
On the road again.
on the road again, so
Yeah.
that was her deal. So, I mean, you know, you guys are busy at CCI, and we're busy doing other stuff, so
And
if there's not an interest, then, I mean, there's plenty of other things we're doing.
So let's
Yeah.
look to the
Rachel
conference.
was really participating because of the public lands issues was the big thing. And now, Picken County, we don't even participate in the public lands travel
With CCI.
committee at all with CCI
Okay.
because of the expense of it and the fact that they were putting in these restrictions that there were 8 people on the travel committee. They are all expected to vote the party line from CCI, even though it would very possibly go against what Picken County believes in.
So maybe we could monitor this and lower our carbon footprint this year and see how bad we miss it.
Yeah. I mean, we're still looking at, depending on what CCI does, if they end up ever changing rules for voting, we may be pulling out CCI.
I think maybe I'll just note for us, maybe in our March CCI get-together, we'll touch base with some of our more like-minded commissioners on the public lands group to see if there was anything of a factor important at the legislative conference this year. Does that
Great.
sound good?
That would be
I have a
great
connection
follow-up.
with a very active county commissioner, county supervisor, I think they call him, in Alexandria. And she's always going to those, so I can always touch base with her too and say, hey, what do you think? She's really active in that, and of course, she just has to cross the bridge to get there, so.
Yeah.
I could always touch base with Penny too and find out.
And one other point is we could withdraw from CCI and still be participating in NACO.
Oh, yeah.
It's two different things, and if we felt we were more effective participating on a national level, we could choose to
Yeah.
do that.
Because I used to be on the board for NARC, the National Association of Regional Councils, which would meet kind of tail end to tail end with NACO to try and keep people over. If you're going to go back there for one, you just stayed longer for the other. But I don't even know what's happened with that other organization. So I just think we monitor it and see if their regular conference, their annual conference, has something we might really be interested in participating in.
Okay, that sounds good. I think we agree on that. Should we move along? We've got our 215s are all here, I believe. We could start that a little early. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Winter Elk Demographics and Impact Study. Welcome.
Hi, guys and ladies.
If you could identify yourselves for us, for the public, that'd be great.
Well, I'll kick it off. I'm Gary Tenenbaum. I'm the Director of Picken County Open Space and Trails. And with me are...
I'm Julie Mao. I'm the terrestrial biologist for Colorado Parks and Wildlife in Glenwood Springs.
And I'm Curtis Tesh, the District Wildlife Manager for the Upper Roaring Fork Valley.
Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Yes, well, thank you for providing some time for us to come and be on TV to try to get the word out about what the elk demographics and recreation impact study is all about. As you guys know, when we did the budget, part of one of the things that we are funding is we're funding partial of the study for this elk demographics and recreation impact study. The county is putting in $54,000 towards it in 2019. And as with all studies, it sounds great, but there's a lot of stuff involved with the study. So Today I was just gonna bring Julie, who's the main terrestrial biologist on this area, to really just give you a quick overview of what the study is really gonna, do and what the public should expect to see as the study progresses.
So, so the study is actually being headed up by two of our mammals researchers, Eric Bergman and Nathaniel Rail. And they couldn't be here today because they're double booked in Steamboat today, which is another one of their study sites for a lot of similar work. So basically there are two components to the study, as Gary alluded to. So the demographics part is at the DAU scale. So, and this is, the DAU is E15, and it covers from Glenwood Springs down to Marble, and then the whole south side of the Roaring Fork Valley. And the plan is for this initial year, is to deploy 30 collars on cow elk sometime around mid to late March. We'll be doing helicopter capture work. And then, so those cows that are captured will be tested for pregnancy, and the ones that are pregnant will get a collar, and then they'll also get a transmitter that when they give birth, it will fall out with the calf, and then the crew will be able to locate the calf and then capture it and put a radio collar on it. So and the goal overall of that part of the study is to look at pregnancy rates, cow body condition in late winter, neonatal calf survival, and the cause and timing of deaths of calves. And then the second component is looking at the impacts of recreation, and that part is headed up by Eric Bergman. So he's going to be deploying trail cameras, or like remote cameras. They're not necessarily going to be on trails, but there are several study sites throughout the valley. So two sites that are heavily recreated and that have seasonal closures, and then those are paired with two adjacent sites that are primarily private lands with little to no recreation. And then, so he'll be putting out a grid of cameras on each of those four study sites. They'll be spaced about a mile apart, and they're motion sensor as well as timer, so they'll take a picture if an animal walks in front of it, and then also they'll take a picture every 15 minutes otherwise. And the purpose of that is to get so kind of like localized abundance estimates of elk at different times over the course of the summer. Did you have a question?
No, I was just saying that's a lot of data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this camera grid analysis is being developed between some researchers at University of Montana and then working with our researchers.
Are the cameras collecting data, or are they actually uploading it? Is it a wireless technology?
No, they'll just be stored on a card, and they'll be placed at like probably sometime in late March to April, depending on snow levels and access and things like that. And then they'll just be set out, and then they'll be recollected at the end of the towards like November. Eric thinks that the batteries will last that whole period, and what we have yet to find out is if the memory card will last.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. So.
We've been doing a lot of cameras throughout the winter because we do a ton of cameras on our seasonal closures, and the batteries definitely last. It's the memory card that it depends on how many pictures we take. Sometimes a branch will all of a sudden come forward and go ding, 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 and you're like, you just got 2,000 photos of a branch.
It's a good branch, though.
Well, one of the big reasons why we have been so interested in this, because for years, in all the management plans that we've done for Pickens County, and also the work we do with the BLM and the Forest Service, there's a low cow-calf ratio in this valley, and
it's been declining
it's
over
even-
the decades, ever since the 80s. It's just been continually declining.
So why? And it's difficult because a lot of people think it could be recreation, it could be development, it could be habitat, it could be a lot of different things. And so this is a great way of getting actual data to figure out, if we can figure out what is causing this, and really it will help us tune our seasonal closures. It'll help us do management activities, enhancements, prescribed fire, you name it. It'll really help us understand what habitats they're using for calving, what habitats they're using for migration in winter and summer. And, the recreation impact study is something everyone kind of wants to know, because is recreation having a significant impact on the elk? And so these researchers out of Montana, and it's an experiment, and it'll be interesting to see the data that comes from it. And so we're looking forward to the data. But how many years?
The plan is for it to go 6 years.
A 6-year study.
So be ready for another financial ask at the end of this year. But we'll have more information when we come back in budget time to really give you guys, hey, here's initially what we found, and here's here's additional funding that we need. The good thing is since we put the press release out, we got some emails from folks that potentially have corporate sponsors that want to help with the studies and stuff. So we'll see if we can find ways to help fund it in other sources. And
So, why 6 years? That seems like a lengthy time, especially when we're looking at open space and trails management plans.
Well, just to account for different, variation in weather from year to year, for example, and just to collect enough data over time. It's a pretty standard amount of time for a large ungulate study. I don't know if it was clear earlier, but the study's not only going on here, but also up in Steamboat, and there's also demographic studies going on that are going to start up, as well in Steamboat, and then Uncompahgre and Trinchera Ranch.
All for 6 years?
Some have already started as pilot studies, and then, these two here and in Steamboat are starting up this year.
And how is the one in Steamboat being funded?
That's a question for Nathaniel and Eric. They're in charge of that.
I'll get you
but
that
there's
information.
There's other funding sources from, I think there are private landowners who have contributed, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, our agency, so, yeah.
So we would be looking at sort of similar types of sponsors, Gary,
That's,
down the road?
That's to be determined more by Eric and Nathaniel, so that I can't really answer that.
But basically, we put in for the $54,000 this year. It really helps to do the 30 collars and those pieces, as they see what happens this summer, obviously. And, the good thing is Tom Cardamone with the Watershed Biodiversity Initiative and others all know about this. And there are other ways to help fund this. So over time,
Look at those
we were just, because we asked during the Carbon Delta Crested Butte Trail, we asked CPW, okay, if you don't have the data, what would you need to do the data? And they were like, well, we'd love to do the study here, but we need this. And we were like, oh, okay, great. And now we get it started. And so for us, it's going to be, it's information that we really need to make some real, I think it could help in land use. It can help in really understanding what the impacts are to our wildlife, because climate change has a piece of it, and so is the habitat. The problem is, a lot of people talk about predators. Is that an issue? We're going to get some information that can help us solve some of the questions.
So are we also, I know Open Space and Trails talked about doing a study on bighorn sheep as well, specifically up to Crystal. So
We're
is
doing
that,
those two.
Not the crystal, but basalt.
Yeah, Basalt Mountain and Highlands. And in the Highlands, I think that's the herd up in Highlands to look at the interaction between the mountain goats and bighorn sheep. Those are the two bighorn studies. We're going to be working with Colorado Parks and Wildlife on the bighorn resiliency in the crystal herd, and you know we'll see where we can go. We're working with Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society on that one too, and we'll see.
so that one hasn't really gotten off the ground yet, but are we looking at funding some of that as well?
If it becomes, they've done a collar study in the past, so there might be other ways to enhance the bighorn herd than just doing this type of collar study. There might be, you know, we're helping fund the continuation of prescribed fire up in the, with the Forest Service up the Crystal. And so habitat condition is a big piece of the overall puzzle, so.
Kelly was up first.
Thank you. Can you help me understand, is the methodology what's being piloted here, or are we calling it a pilot because we don't have this information yet in this area?
Partly pilot just to see if the sample sizes need to be boosted in the future, and also just the logistics, like how accessible the places are where these elk are going to calve. Like we have ideas of where they're going to calve, but the callers are going to tell us where that we're going to need to send the technicians out. And if they end up way back in the wilderness, then it might, you know, be pretty logistically difficult. Or if they end up calving down lower where things are more accessible, then but the hope is to be able to bump up the sample size down the road.
But the research design is something that's been employed elsewhere successfully.
Yeah, the camera grids are sort of a new, not that cameras are new, but the analytic techniques and like how they're going to set it up is something that they're working out with the professors at University of Montana. But as far as the elk demographics part, that's pretty much standard work when you're asking that type of question.
Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, there's several factors that are affecting where the elk go and where they don't go that I think would bear looking at and being part of this study if possible. One being the summer recreation and the dispersal of recreation, especially places like the Hay Park Trail with bicyclers going there, has put a lot of people in an area where there didn't used to hardly be any people during the summer. Mm-hmm. So that would be one factor. A second would be the extended big game hunting seasons, which used to be in October and November. Now they're from the middle of August to the middle of January, and that definitely has changed the patterns of the elk movement in Capitol Creek Valley where I live. There are now elk that live down low on private land all summer long. They don't bother to go up in the high country anymore because they feel safer there. And that never used to happen, but it happens every year now. And then the third factor, I think, would be predation from lions, because I know personally of at least 2 elk kills by lions up in Capitol Creek Valley that we've actually come across the lions eating on an elk carcass.
Yeah, those are...
I don't know if you could somehow track lions while you're tracking the elk. That would be one way to see that.
Yeah, we won't be able to track the lions at the same time. That would involve a whole separate component. But what we will be able to do with the collar information on both the cows and the calves is to determine cause of death. So, and then your other questions, those are exactly the types of questions we're trying to address in this study. So I don't know if the camera grids will include Hay Park specifically, but the Crown is one of the sites. I don't know if Eric's planning to wrap all the way around to that part of the valley there, so.
Yeah, we're trying very hard not to. I mean, it's one of those things that trying to keep this data, you know, kind of just as scientific as possible, and trying to cover the areas that have pretty heavy recreation, but also areas that are critically important for calving. And, you know, looking at that over time is going to be important. But with climate change too, summer habitat could become a major issue too. So, you know, assessing the health of the elk overall will be really important, because you'll see when the calves come out, like, do they have enough fat on them, or like, are they, you know, they healthy compared to other stands? Because, you know, you notice in some of the other areas they're doing work where the elk cow-calf ratios are much higher. Is it because of habitat, or is it because of something else? And so I think there's a lot of things, and this will also coincide with the watershed biodiversity, this Colorado Natural Heritage Program, overall look at habitat, not specifically the animals themselves, but a look at habitat for these animals. And it will really give us a good picture of the habitat health of our entire watershed. So putting these two together, it'll be interesting to see what we can find out in the next 2 to 3 years. And obviously this will take a little longer, but you got to start somewhere. So this is, to us, you know, information. We've asked for the science to guide our management. This is the science.
And there, almost everybody who has an interest in elk seems to have a theory about what's going on, but so
Really? Not
I
me.
guess like I think in terms of doing this study, it's to really get some objective answers so that, you know, and it might bring up more additional questions as well, but it might help to answer some of these specific questions of what's going on and what might be causing the low cow-calf ratios.
Especially since it's been declining for, like Julie said, over 10 years now. This is definitely something we want to get.
Oh, since the 80s.
Since the 80s, so longer than that. Something we want to get ahead of and figure out what exactly is going on, for sure.
Thanks. This is great. I would just encourage you all to reach out. It'd be great if the public understood what all these different studies were. We've got the sheep versus the goats versus, you know, then the elk study, and then the watershed biodiversity. You know, how does all this fit together? That's my big question. And maybe there's an opportunity for an op-ed or an article down the road, so the public really understands how all this works and why we're doing it. Because I think it's all really important, as you've pointed out, and this is the science we're looking for. I would just encourage enough public outreach so people really understand what the situation is and what we're looking to do with it, and how all these various studies are going to fit together.
And that's a critical point. And that's, you know, some of the money that we put in the budget for 2019 was to work Colorado Parks and Wildlife and our partners, all of it, from ACES to Roaring Fork Conservancy.
Right.
We've got to do a better job telling the story. And because we're doing all this work, we've been doing a lot of monitoring, we've been doing a lot of habitat work over time. It's the story is not getting told well enough, and we've got to change that. And so that's going to start to happen pretty significantly this year.
Great. Yeah, just as we're looking at the resilience of the entire system, I think it'd be a great topic. I'd love to read on it. I'd love to learn more. So. Thanks for bringing it in.
I just want to make a side note comment since we have you in the room. In reading about the mountain lions issue down in Glenwood Springs, I'm not going to get into the controversy or the politics or the science. I just have to make a public statement that I know how difficult it is for you to have to put animals down. And my heart goes out to those that had to do that. But I hope the public realizes that you do what is in the best interest of the wildlife. And that was a decision, but it was not easy, I'm sure.
No, it's never easy.
Yeah, it would be really difficult.
Yeah, and same thing with the bears that we deal with up here all
Yeah.
summer long. It's a hard job, but we have to do it. And the recent occurrence that happened over in Fort Collins, that's why.
Yeah.
You know, people might not understand it, but those animals, they're not supposed to be in those communities. They're not supposed to be around houses like that. And when we put them down, it's for a reason to protect the people.
Right.
And
Well, we had that young boy that was in, well, it was in Lower River Road, yeah. So, you know, we don't want to wait for something like that to have to happen, but I just, you know, again, not getting into the controversy of the politics or the science of the decision, I just know that it was a difficult one for, I'm sure, the officers to do.
we appreciate your understanding.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming
Thanks
in.
for being here
But,
today.
you know, we're gonna go, for this, we're trying to get out to the public the information because, you know, you might see some of the trapping and the collaring going on up the Brush Creek Valley, so we are gonna go
Yeah.
talk to the town of Snowmass Village. We're gonna go to the council meeting on February 19th to inform them, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife will be there too to answer their questions, because between these two communities, it's gonna be visible, and we just wanna get people to understand why we're doing it and what it's really gonna do.
So when we get the phone calls, we'll know how to answer them.
So that's the key for
Yeah.
this.
All
There's
right.
an opportunity for an interpretive sign temporarily somewhere at the intercept lot or, you know, somewhere. I'm thinking about the Sky Mountain Park being pretty public, you know. You can see it from 4 sides. So any helicopter activity up there is going to be noticed, and it'd be nice for people to have an easy way to find
Now,
out
let's
what's
keep
going
them
on.
guessing.
Well, the hardest part is all those trails are closed, so no one should be near any of that stuff. So that's why we're working hard on this with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. How do you get the public to know it? Because it's really difficult to put signage because there's nobody out there to look
Yeah.
at the signage right
You know,
now.
on the
But
highway or on the
Right.
bike path,
think
or,
we-
you know, on the
I
bike
guess
path will be closed, right?
I would caution though, just, I guess, I would ask people to, you know, make sure that they don't disrupt our operations or affect the elk, just for the safety of the helicopter crew and for the elk.
Don't chase the elk off before.
Yeah, and just, the work that they're doing is dangerous, and so I think just if people can kind of be respectful to keep their distance and things like that, so.
We wish you all the luck.
Right. Thank you for coming in.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a break, Grassroots. Actually, we're adjourning. Anything else?
We need a motion to go into executive session.
So I do need a motion.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Executive session will be on the subject of Cougar Canyon, CRS 246402-4E, Redstone Water and Sand District Water Rights Litigation, CRS 246402-4B, Twin Lakes Water Right Litigation, CRS 246402-4B. Do we have a motion?
That's it.
Yeah, let's see if there's any other additions in here. Do we need to, East Sopers Creek, thank you, road vacation, caretaker dwelling unit restriction,
Those are-
land use development app,
Those are all
restaurant
new to me.
inspection program, river district update pursuant to CRS 246402-4B, and Cougar Canyon's already on here.
4B and 4E, okay.
So I'll second that motion and hope we can get through all of that in an hour.
That's right. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grassroots.
Thanks, Grassroots, we're done here.